All right, guys. So remember yesterday we talked about the two plans. All right. So we're here at the Continental Convention. We have the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. They're here to revise or fix the Articles of Confederation. Now, based on what we've learned about it, do you think they're going to be able to fix it, or you're going to have to trash the whole thing? You know, sometimes you write that paper and it's just horrible. Okay, you got to start all over. All right. So there's two main delegates that are there with their plans. Edmund Randolph, who is responsible for the Virginia plan. Now James Madison is the author of it, and William Patterson, who was in charge of the New Jersey plan. So these two plans are different in multiple ways, but there's a couple things that really make them stand out. All right. So first off, the Virginia plan was to create a whole new government. All right. We're going to have one executive leader who's chosen by a legislature. And then we're going to have a federal court system so that somebody doesn't commit a crime in Massachusetts and then they just move to Virginia and they can't be messed with, right? There's going to be a court system that covers the whole thing. So they can be tried in each one fairly, right? So the big thing was there was a two-house legislature, which, if you remember, when I talk about our legislature today, we are two houses. We're bicameral. So we have a House of Representatives, and then we have the Senate. Okay. Now, this is the big kicker here. All right. So think of a bicycle, bicameral, bicycle, two. So the lower house was elected by the people, and the upper house was appointed by the lower house. Okay. So the lower house is the people that you get to choose, but the people that are above them are picked by the people that you chose. Okay, so you don't have as much say as you would think you do, right? Same thing with the executive leader. It says it's chosen by the legislature. Well, think about our government today. Does the legislature pick the president, or who picks him? It's us, right? We pick them. So the number of representatives or votes are based on the population. It's good for the big states, bad for the small states, right? Because all the big states have more population. Or if you're like Massachusetts, you're a smaller state with a lot of population, so you have more power, right? So more population means more power, all right? Now the small states, they're like, well, this sucks for us. We're getting out muscled here in this situation. Everybody wants everything to be fair, right? But what I tell y'all, life's not always fair. So that's the Virginia plan. The New Jersey plan by Patterson was basically to just fix the Articles of Confederation. Why do we want to fix something? Why do we want to start all the way over, right? So they want to keep a unicameral or a one-house legislature. Think of unicycle. Unicycle has how many wheels? One. So unicameral, and those number of votes was one per state, no matter what. Okay, so each state has one vote. The only thing they wanted to do was to give it federal taxing power, because remember, we were broke, we couldn't pay any debts because the central government couldn't say, hey, Virginia, you haven't paid, we need you to pay some taxes. Hey, Massachusetts, pay. So because we got to pay who helped us, France. We got to pay France off. You know, they helped us a lot. So we're broke, we can't even fund the military. So Spain could say, hey, you know what, let's go over there and let's just go ahead and take the colonies back. We'll make them Spanish, and we wouldn't have anybody to protect us. All right, no navy, no military. It also created a weak executive branch, which was more than one person. So remember, the Anti-Federalists were scared of a monarch or a king, right? Because we just got out of that relationship. That was toxic, wasn't it? So it would have been one person in charge of the executive branch, one person in charge of the judicial branch, and one person in charge of the legislature branch. And they all would have had the same amount of power. So it'd be three people with the same amount of power. Now, let's think about it from a couple standpoints here. If you go, well, it's for the athletes in their football. Who's in charge, right? Coach Vasquez, right? He's in charge of everybody, right? At the school, who's in charge? Miss Mirella. She runs the show, right? We all do what she says. When you're in my classroom, who's in charge? Me. All right. When I'm not there, who's in charge? The sub. All right. We don't have three people in the class that are running the show. Everybody has the same power, right? No, wouldn't work. It's a dictatorship in there. All right. So that's what they want. So that's kind of the problem with the New Jersey plan. Okay. Now it was better for the smaller states because one state, one vote. So it was more fair, right? But what I say, life ain't always fair. So then here comes Roger Sherman, who's a neutral guy. He's not an anti-federalist. He's not a federalist. He's kind of in the middle because he's like, hey, you got some good points over here. You got some good points over there. Let's talk about the Connecticut Compromise, or what they call the Great Compromise. All right, the Great Compromise. It was a new government, two-house legislature, which was bicameral, right? So two. The lower house, which is the House of Representatives, those votes were based on population, right? Then you had the upper house, which was the Senate, and it was 2 senators per state. So that helps out the small states because everybody has the same amount of power in the Senate. The House of Representative, depending on population, is how much power you have. I just looked it up right now. Texas has 36 representatives, okay? Compared to, see, I always want to get fancy. I like giving you guys information, right? Let's see if I can pull up. Where's the Goog at? Let's do this. Let's see, Rhode Island. So Rhode Island only has 2 representatives. So they have 2 in the Senate, 2 in the House because they have a small population. All right. So that's crazy. Anyways, so that is the Great Compromise. All right, guys. The lower house was based on population. The upper house was based on their 2 senators, 2 per state, each being equal. Okay. Now that fixed one part of the convention. Okay. So then we had another part, which is the other sheet that you guys have. Also, all this should be in your journal. All right. So, Continental Convention delegates forget AOC, create the new Constitution, and if representation is based on population, then Southern states want slaves to be counted as part of the population. Now, how much do y'all know about slavery? I don't know, but from what I know and what you should know is slaves were not treated as people, they're treated as property. Okay. So they're treated as less than a person, right? In this time, which is obviously horrible. But now the South is like, oh, we get more power if we treat them as people, right? So the North is like, slaves are considered property. Southerners just like horses. Southerners just like horses or chickens, right? Therefore, slaves should not be considered part of the population in the representative votes. However, since slaves are property, they can be taxed like land. So remember that. Whenever you buy a house, you gotta pay property taxes. All right, they're horrible, you know. So the North is like, well, we can make some more money off of them if we think about it this way, because they all got slaves down there and they got all their big land, their big plantations. We're just gonna tax them, which will help the country out, whatever. Well, then the South is like, no, slaves are property. However, they're also people, right? Because they are people. Now, do you think they're doing that for a good reason? No. So, therefore, population figures to determine representation should include slaves, right? So, if we're going to think about it like that, the people should be counted for representation, okay? However, slaves should not be taxed as property because they're people. So they're trying to get a win-win on this side, and the North is trying to get a win-win on the other side. So then they come to the 3/5 compromise. 3/5 of the slave population will be counted to determine population for representation. Y'all just saw little mama. Babe, you want to come and be in the video? All right. Thanks, hon. So 3/5 of the slave population would be counted to determine population for representative votes. This meant that every 5 slaves would count as 3 white people in the number for representation. So that was the compromise. Now, what they thought was at this time that slavery was kind of going away, and that they would just kind of do this to get them to sign, to ratify, right? They're just trying to get everybody to be united, and they're like, whatever, we'll do this real quick, and then we'll amend it later, right, or repeal it later. Well, what we know now is that led to it led to everybody breaking apart, right, when we get to the Civil War. So and no, I'm trying to think where we at. 87, over 100 years more of slavery, at least, So that's where we're at now. So make sure you have all this down, and then y'all guys are going to do the puzzle piece, okay? Make sure you don't have your phones out. Make sure that you're not giving this up a hard time, because I'm coming back tomorrow. All right. Y'all have a good day.